let's get started. So our approach, right? So we started our cloud journey over 4 years ago. We said if we were able to deliver infrastructure as service on a self-service basis, we will be golden. And I said, okay, no, that's not what developers want. So we want platform as a service. So we started developing platforms, and now we can deliver platform as a service, where 3-tier application stacks or containerized apps can be quickly ordered and delivered from one click of a button from our self-service portal. But now we are going up the stack a little bit more, is how do we make sure not only we deliver infrastructure and platform as a service, but also the workflows, the CI/CD workflows what our developers need can also be consumed with, in a self-service manner with one click of a button, and they can deliver their application. So we are what we call in IT to path to do IT as a service. And our goal and vision is everything we do in IT should be delivered and consumed in a self-service manner. And it is as a service, meaning not technology. It comes as a service where we have service managers assigned to all of the service. They do the lifecycle management of the service, and it can be consumed and delivered and lifecycle managed throughout this period of the service. We are in a hybrid multi-cloud architecture where we use both private and public clouds to deliver these services. And of course, the data fabric, which connects across different clouds for making sure we can do data migration between them for any disaster recovery, workload mobility, or archiving type scenarios. From a DevOps perspective, we are starting the journey, but our goals are kind of simple. We heard Research 451 talk about all the higher level metrics. But for now, what we are trying to do is empower our developers. Means we want to remove all the distraction out of our development environment. Today, if we look at a developer time consumption, 70% of their time consumption is chasing where environments are ready or not. Testing, chasing QA leads to say, can you test against my environment? So how can we build up a platform where their environment consumption, their testing, their CI processes are all end-to-end integrated? So that's primary focus for us today. How do we do faster time to value is when they do a change or when they do a code commit in our environment, how does from that coding commit all the way released and to the production? So how can we make that workflow as efficient as possible? Efficient use of resources. Today we have any application environments taking 20 at the max side 20 development environments, or some have even 5 development environments. And the reason they want to hog these environments is because it is hard for IT to deliver them when they need it. So how do we deliver on demand when needed and build it up requirements? So idea is what platform we want to build and give it to our developers that they can consume these environments in a quick fashion. And we don't have these resources running all the time, especially in their development labs, when they're going to only develop once a month in a year or something like that. We also have the goal to modernize the application. I think it goes hand in hand with DevOps. It's not a requirement. We can do DevOps around traditional monolithic apps too, but it's not as efficient as you would do around a modernized, containerized, and a microservices-based app. So in this focus, we are also focused on what are the standards, what are the practices, what are the guidelines and guardrails we put for our developers to how they convert their traditional monolithic apps into a microservices type application. And also all the new applications they want to build in this environment. So end to end, how do we want to make sure we have an efficient automated software development lifecycle for all our corporate applications, and how we apply that to all the business applications we have in IT. So that's the approach we have today, and the goals we're trying to decide. In IT, we have 5 levels of maturity when we say DevOps. And essentially, our belief is everybody has DevOps. They have dev team, they have ops team. Somehow they write the code and make it to production. But the maturity comes from how efficient that process is, right? Are we doing manual builds? Are we doing manual testing? How collaborated the teams are? Is it the enterprise architecture or application strategy we have around the applications tied to the DevOps strategy? So based on those levels, either we are doing ad hoc or we are repeatable or we have defined. These are the 5 categories we have in IT. We decide as how mature the application is. And this comes from two perspectives, right? The way we look at it is from the application side and the platform side. So from the platform side, do we have the capability to deliver those levels of maturity? So if some application owner wants to say, I want to create a level 5 app, do I have the tools chain in place? Do I have the processes in place? Do I have the collaboration in place to be able to give that to my developer? At the same time, I have the platform, but is the app ready to be consumed? Do they have automated testing in place? Do they have the CI/CD pipelines in place for their application to be able to a level 5 app, right? So if you look at oops, that's too many slides up. Sorry, I don't know. That's a 5-slide button. Okay, here. So yeah, here's how we are distinguishing between them, right? So do we do automated testing? Do we do automated builds? And how does the application get released in production? Is it everything automated? We talked about, somebody mentioned Amazon and Netflix of the world doing 50,000 lines of code changes every day, right? So they are pretty much in their level 5 optimization level. For us, what we are doing right now is, this is how we define, right? So for us, we are at level 3 today, where essentially a developer, when they make a change, it automatically gets built, the testing is done on an automated fashion, and the code is ready in our repository to be pushed to production. So it's not automated, deployed in production today, but with a push of button, it would be deployed in production. So that's what we are at continuous delivery phase today in our life cycle. So the next level is for some of the applications where we don't even have to push the button. It automatically goes into production without making any manual effort. And the next one is where we have the metrics like what we talked about, where we are measuring the error rates, the response rates, and how quickly the software is going in production. And we also have things like chaos monkeys and things like what Amazon would use to see, to introduce failures, to say how an application will behave when those kind of things happen. So those are all goals for us, and we have plans and roadmap how to reach there. But for us today, we are at level 3. And as you can see in a few slides, this DevOps is not natural, right? It takes a lot of caring and feeding and process to reach to those levels. So it's not going to happen by itself. And if we had a choice, we would want all our applications to be at level 5. But idea is, some of our applications at level 1 today, it's not a bad thing, right? So if there is an application where you have releases once in 3 years, once in 5 years, depending on what the application is, you still might be okay with doing manual. But if there is an application which is core to your business, where you have a real need and demand to release features at the space where business needs it, you pretty much want to be at the lower end of the spectrum. So it's a value versus effort statement. How much value you want to get out of the application versus how much effort you put in would define where the application would lie. So again, two ways to think about this maturity, where from an organization perspective your platform is, what kind of capabilities you can deliver from a platform perspective. Do you have the tools chain, and do you have the processes in place to do it? And from an application perspective, which application really would, where it fits in based on how critical it is and what speed the business wants stuff to be developed at. So that's our view from that perspective. And to do that, we also have, the first step we start with is always app rationalization, right? So we have done a thorough analysis of all the apps we have in our business portfolio. We have about 391 of those. And we use a couple of models, right? The top one over there is the Gartner time model: tolerate, invest, migrate, and eliminate. And also the bottom one is what we call as 5 Rs, right? We have sliced and diced all our applications in this model to say, where should our focus in terms of our DevOps journey? So the top one, tolerate and eliminate, already are less critical applications. They are going to slowly phase out, so we're not too much worried about those. The invest ones are already in the right target state architecture, and we have to continue to develop and add more business functionality to those applications. The migrate ones are ones where we are they are still critical to business, but we don't like where the target state architecture of that. And what do we mean by target state architecture is the 5 Rs, right? So idea is where exactly we have critically defined in our application database where we want those applications to be in their life cycle. So for example, SaaS is one of the target state architecture. I think Mike mentioned in his talk, we are going to be really heavy on SaaS in our moving forward. Next 3 to 5 years, we are expecting about 75% of our apps to be going in SaaS. And idea is this tells us where not to do DevOps, right? So for feature functionality development in those apps, we're going to rely on a third-party cloud provider like Office 365 to say, hey, release more features over there. We don't have to take the burden on our side. So first thing in DevOps for us is also to identify where not to do DevOps and what's the way ones we want to prioritize and focus on. And the rest of them are essentially what we put into the other 4 R's is, are we going to completely rebuild an app? That's like with microservices, with monolithic apps, and doing continuously CI/CD practices all the way to level 5 would be the category we have for, we would put that under a rebuild category. So what is our strategy around that is, if it's a common business processes which not unique to NetApp, which everybody in the industry uses, like email, your company or NetApp would use the same way, it's going to be a SaaS for us, and we're going to align it to a SaaS strategy. If it is an innovative strategic app where we want to quickly develop a feature and functionality, and we want to make sure we fail first, we go to the next one. We do business at the speed at what our business demands. Those are going to be a rebuild category where we do DevOps at the lower levels, level 4 or level 5. Everything else is essentially we want to re-architect, refactor, or rehost, right? So those are the categories, and we have guidelines and best practices around it. If you want to hear more about it, we are at booth number 51. We can go into detail, like what do we mean by refactor or re-architect, and what are the things you should be looking at. For example, in rebuild, what do you do at the data persistence level? What do you do at the code level? What do you do at the how do you modularize your business services or microservices level and things like those. So those are kind of guidelines and guide rails we have put in IT around categorizing those applications. And that's what we mean by target state architecture, right? So everything in our application has application portfolio has a current state and a target state, and where do we want to take it from a target state perspective. So another one, everything new is essentially we are going to be in the rebuild phase, right? So we talked about existing, the top 2 lines are existing, but everything new is all done in a rebuild phase where it comes with microservices, it comes with automated testing, it comes with containers and all the CI/CD practices we talked about. And at the bare minimum, if it's an app, we're going to just buy from packaged app, right? So let's say we talk about data lakes or we talk about Hadoop clusters. Bare minimum, we are going to do infrastructure as service if it doesn't fit in that. So that's essentially our application or a cloud strategy around which cloud, which IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, where they fit in, and what do we do from a DevOps perspective. So to draw the picture, I think we have two areas. Either we are building the applications or we are buying the application. On the left is what we call as NGDC. It's a short form for Next Gen Data Center. That's where we are building. And buying is what we are doing from SaaS, right? So 75% of our apps on the right side, we're going to rely on the common cloud providers to get the common services. But anything which is unique to NetApp, which is critical to NetApp, we're going to build on the left side. And our definition of data center is no longer 4 walls. It's all the cloud providers, including private cloud, where we get the resources at the price point and the performance what we are needing. But all of those are software controlled and orchestrated. So that's our definition of NGDC. We build a software controlled and orchestrated environment which our developers can use to build the next cloud native and cloud aware type applications using DevOps practices. So, and that's where 25% of our apps would be going as we go. It's all the new going in there, and then slowly we're going to convert from a legacy to this model. So what are the pillars of NGDC? I think we saw this picture up front. There's a lot goes in those 6 pillars for us to get ready to be NGDC in terms of containers. Definitely we are heavy on Kubernetes in NetApp IT, and we're using Docker as our platform. For configuration management, Chef, Puppet, and we have things like those, but we are really big on Red Hat Ansible and Red Hat Cloud Forms for getting infrastructure up and running. For code and binary management, we use Git and JFrog. CI/CD, Jenkins. We have Azure DevOps, which is the old VSTS and new Azure DevOps. Cloud and PaaS, we are OpenShift, along with all the cloud providers listed there. And this should be analytics, but we still are not in the analytics phase. It's probably as we go more, define more metrics and have more measurements around our applications, this becomes analytics, and we have metrics to go to level 4 and 5 of DevOps. But today we still monitor quite a lot in those environments, so using Xenos and Splunk. Our goal would be that OpenShift over there becomes a StackPoint Cloud one day. I don't know if you heard NetApp acquired a Kubernetes company too, StackPoint Cloud. So essentially it fits in there in the cloud and PaaS layer. And yeah, I think that's the pillars. What we are that's the whole tools framework. So this is from what it takes to what are the ingredients but this is what it takes to be, right? So our approach is build the next gen development platform, which means all of those things we talked about in the slide 1 are all act and behave like one, right? So when our developer needs to require resources, they really don't have to go to a PaaS platform or IaaS platform. They just do a regular code commit in their environment, and their tools are integrated with the platform tools like OpenShift and Kubernetes, which essentially run on infrastructure as a service and get them the environments and development environments what they're looking for. Of course, we give them as part of the product catalog all the modern stacks like mean stack or bean stacks or MongoDBs or what they are needing for building this next gen applications. The next bigger pillar where we adopt all DevOps and CI/CD practices, which means these workflows are automated end to end. We have the testing which is needed against these. We have invested in test tools what are needed to do the test runs, and also testing is fully integrated into the life cycle of the software development. And also we have things like branching strategy and release strategy and all those things which are essentially automated in the tool when they're going through all those different cycles in the life cycle management. The third area we are focusing on is modernizing the application architecture, which means adopting more of containers and microservices, and essentially unitizing all the business functionality as a microservice, so different development teams can work at their own pace without overstepping on each other, right? So that also enhances the speed at what DevOps can work in. And last but not the least is work in an agile operating model. Essentially what we are doing is transitioning our technology owners, which used to be very focused heavily into delivering technology, to now product owners. Everything in our catalog is a product, and IT resources are product managers for it. So if your catalog today has, let's say, they don't do chargeback or cost tracking today, they have a roadmap in some next 2 months or 3 months, they would have those kind of functionality in it. All of those are user stories are tracked in an agile way in our ServiceNow tool, and over a period of time, using the sprints and backlogs, they are delivered into the platform. So the metaphor we use is essentially a track or a rail running around the track. Essentially, we just keep enhancing and developing more features and functionality to all of those items as we go along, using an agile and operation delivery model. So those are the 4 areas, not apart from having the tools and structure, these are the 4 areas what it means to be NGDC in this environment. So any questions, feel free to stop. We have the ball, we can throw it around, and we can talk about it. How do we do that and how do we do this? But, and yeah. I'll take a pause here real quick before we go to the next 2. Which just shows about what the workflow actually looks like when they click some buttons here. All right. So moving forward, I have 2 of the workflows which we have shown over here, what a life cycle looks like for our developers from day 1, once they're trying to onboard an application today, and what's a day 2, what's a day 2 look like once the application is onboarded, right? So again, as I was saying, DevOps is not natural. It takes a lot of effort and care and feeding and integration work in the back to get it delivered. So you have to make sure you are kind of doing it for real business values and reasons, like what you're trying to gain out of it, and only for the applications where it makes sense for primarily doing it, right? So here's start of the day one, right? When for everything front-ending, even for IaaS, PaaS, or whatever our end users need, ServiceNow is our go-to portal. Even for laptop or software, that's what they will go today. So in this case, if they are a developer wants an environment where they're just starting to build a new application, they log into ServiceNow, they click give me a new development environment, and automatically using all of these tools, the environment is given to them. So we have the concept of what we call as host spaces and workspaces. The workspace is primarily where the initial development and testing begins, and once they are ready to move beyond that state into stage of production, they essentially have host spaces. And the workflow is kind of similar, depending on where they are in the life cycle, you get this delivered, essentially using all the tools. So once they click on ServiceNow, which essentially goes to Red Hat, and it kicks an Ansible script, it would go ahead and create their environment in Artifactory, and get the in the version control, so get the Docker registry and third-party registry and Helm registry created. They will get a tool we use internally is called Neat, essentially based on how the application is defined in our application database, depending on who the support owner is, who the business owner is. All those permissions are already set at different level in different environment, what they can do around those things, right? So once the application is onboarded, the ops has a function, the developer has a function, and all those roles and responsibility have to be set up. So that's already done as part of this. The project is created in OpenShift using a namespace, and all the stack, what they have selected is deployed and given to them. They could have mean stack or bean stack, whatever stack they have delivered, they can start developing using that. And last but not the least, Visual Studio is what we say over here, but it's essentially Azure DevOps is the new name of it. It's their CI/CD tool, what they use to now create and kick off their pipelines, and all of those things are already created. A project is created, the variables are created, and things like those are created. So developer essentially can start developing their code from that point in time. And from a day two perspective, when they're ready to develop the code, they essentially either through Git or from their laptop upload the code or make a change in existing code. Essentially what triggers an automated build using Ansible, again, in this case, in the JFactory. Well, I don't see the pointer over there, but okay. And the dev environment is created in the workspace. The dotted line is hard to see over there. The first box on the left, dotted line, is the workspace. Once the testing is done and the unit is pad, the code is approved, and it goes to our next level Artifactory. And once that is done, the containers which are developed in the first phase are already destroyed. So that's what we mean by efficient use of resources. It's only there for the period of time when they need it, and the developers are not hogging on to the environment what they used to do before, where they would keep it for months and only use it for a fraction of time. In this case, it just gets committed to the next level. Again, once they are ready to move to the next level, new stage environments are created. They do their LNP or QA or whatever those kind of tests are done. Once that is approved, automatically the environment is ready, and the code is deployed in Artifactory. With a push of a button today, which is what we call it as level 3, it can be pushed into production. But in future, our plan is even this goes as to level 4 and 5, gets automatically deployed in production with that level of testing and validation. All right, so I think that's essentially the last slide I had for talking about it, but a quick takeaways, at least from our perspective. We have as a service framework for everything we do in IT is essentially deliver infrastructure or platform or even the workflows and pipelines what we have here as a service to our customer, so it can be consumed on demand in self-service manner, and we treated all of them as a service before we used to do technology. Definitely tying the DevOps journey with business and application strategy, meaning make sure we remove the apps where we don't want to do DevOps, like Microsoft Office 365, where we will wait for Microsoft to release features as we need it. But for the ones which are things like Active IQ or auto support, where we want to be delivering features and functionality at the speed where business wants it. Definitely, those are where we are going to start and prioritizing on. Build platform capabilities and tools environment, what we have in the back, to make sure we embrace for cloud-aware applications and definitely modernize the development practices we have. And then, again, it's a long journey, so it's never going to end. Even as we start, we know we have 3 years of more work to do, even to get to few of the applications to level 5. But that's where the journey is. So it's hopefully you guys would have the similar experience as you go through it too. Any questions, comments about this? Cool. All right, thank you. And we are at booth number 51. So anything in addition to this, feel free to hang out in the central IT area. Not only DevOps, any of the topics we touched in terms of are we adopting cloud, how do you decide between which cloud to use for what, all are fair game, and we can talk about that in the Insight Central. Thank you.
Thanks, Kamal.